Hey everyone, you're listening and watching Rashkin Report. My name is Yuri Rashkin, and we're talking about Ukraine today. As you can see, my shirt says Slava Ukraini, Geroyam Slava, and that's well, for a bigger reason than just this conversation, but it particularly pertains to this conversation. I'm very excited to welcome to the program Ilya Knizhnik. Ilya is joining us from Pennsylvania, if I'm not mistaken. Am I correct?
Yes, you're correct. From Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. Excellent. And he is, working as a big part of Ukraine TrustChain, an organization that is working hard to gather resources and to send them to Ukraine and to help Ukraine, but, a little different way, but extremely effective. Ilya, you are feeding tens of thousands of people every day, not you individually, but your organization. And your organization helped evacuate tens of thousands of people out of Ukraine. Talk a little bit about how this came together, because you're not in Ukraine, but you're from Ukraine. So just explain to us a little bit.
Sure. So thank you for having me on. So I'm originally from Kiev, but have been in the U.S. for since the mid-90s. And like so many others, I was horrified when Russia invaded Ukraine. Unlike many others, I could only stay horrified for so long before I sprung into actions. Since my family members who were there refused to evacuate, I found resources to evacuate others and friends' families and to help others. And before I knew it, more and more resources connected. Then I connected with a number of friends who pulled our resources together, and we were able to transfer aid directly to Ukraine. And when I say transfer aid, I mean funds to volunteer groups there that are doing amazing work on the ground. For the American listeners, you might have read this story in Washington Post or NPR about the twins that were born on the night of the bombing in Kiev through a surrogate, and they're born to a Chicago family. And the first link in our organization, which is called Ukraine TrustChain, was born that night along with the twins, when a lot of friends were looking for resources to help those twins as Russia was bombing Kiev. And a lot of selfless people in Ukraine were willing to go around under bombing, under shelling, to find preemie formula and to find other things to support those twins for people that they have never met. And that's how some of the first connections were born. We were, because a lot of us are former Soviet immigrants, we have other connections. We were introduced to other groups. And then another friend said, someone asked him, like, can you help us fund the evacuation? I can't fund an evacuation. I'm a person. I'm not the UN or the Red Cross. It's like, well, no, we need $500 to evacuate the village. How are you going to evacuate a village? Well, I'm going to borrow my friend's van, and I have my own van, and these couple people volunteered their cars, and we just need to pay for gas, and we will evacuate this village before the Russians advance. And we sent the funds, just hoping that this would work. We weren't sure, and it did work, and they evacuated the village. And another link in the chain was born. To date, we have evacuated over 37,000 people from hotspots under Russian fire, from small villages, from places where there's no infrastructure, no food, and in the worst kind of conditions that you could possibly imagine. We feed over 50,000 each week. We do this all as a official U.S. nonprofit now, or 501c3. We run at zero overhead on the U.S. side, and in some ways we're an umbrella nonprofit where we have 10 teams on the Ukraine side covering all major areas of Ukraine and specializing in different kinds of humanitarian work. And every dollar donated directly to us goes directly to Ukraine.
Yeah, I think that important part of this piece is, first of all, skill that you gotta have to manage the logistics of this operation. And please talk a little bit about that. But the other piece is trust, because you gotta have that trust that the money that you're going to send is going to be used for gas to evacuate the village. How do you make that work?
So that's part of our name. We're Trust Ukraine TrustChain. So what we do is we have these verified teams of volunteers that are all registered nonprofits on the ground in Ukraine. And we fund only the most effective ones, the people who can do incredible work and tons of work with very limited resources. And how we know that they can do this work is that they've been doing this for 4 months. There are, if you look on our website, UkraineTrustChain.org, There are weekly reports from all of this work across the months. You can see who went there, where they evacuated people, where they fed people, where they purchased food, where they transferred resources, which hospitals were helped. All we publish everything across our social media and our website, and we provide this kind of detailed information that it's not just a nebulous thousands of people that were fed, it's in these specific regions. It's where the Russia just bombed that we delivered extra aid. It's when they're advancing that we try to evacuate people. And we try to show as much proof of this work as possible.
Why work through you when you're in essence, I mean, can appear like a middleman, as an organization, because there are things like Red Cross and, United Nations. Why not just help with funds them? Why help you, your organization?
So there was an excellent piece in The Guardian recently about how 99% of the aid in Ukraine is delivered to the final point by volunteer teams that are not working with any large organization. This includes, and then this aid, these teams receive 1/4 of the funding that's been donated to Ukraine. Red Cross does not deliver to small villages. They barely get resources to large cities. Red Cross does run shelters in Poland. Red Cross does not evacuate anyone even remotely near the conflict zone. It does not go into dangerous areas where people get shelled. It does not go into places where you have to go off-road to reach a village, because someplace we mine, they are nowhere near. Sometimes they do provide some of the aid that we deliver, but for the most part, items are sourced locally in Ukraine. And people are very welcome to donate directly to these volunteer teams. They're all registered organizations. It's just that they are nonprofits on the Ukraine side. And so they can't provide the same level of verification, and to donate to them, you have to have either do a wire transfer or have a local bank account. And where we are effectively an umbrella organization. I can't claim credit for these evacuations. I can only claim credit for funding the heroes who do these evacuations. So when you donate to us, it's tax deductible. Your money goes directly to Ukraine, and it's incredibly effective in providing aid where it's needed most.
Now, it's very, first, it's personally rewarding to collect specific items here, which may be more expensive to purchase here even than in Ukraine, and to see that item, in a picture in Ukraine. So there, I don't want to discount that in any way. We're doing this ourselves, although you're claiming that your way is much more effective because you're purchasing things in Ukraine at lower prices, etc. But then there's also people who just don't have the funds to give. It's easier for them to help with coloring book than to give $50 or $100 or whatever. How do you balance that out, and what do you tell to people who are looking to help Ukraine, period?
Well, so my son actually was in the local newspaper because he did a lemonade stand for Ukraine. And my general push is that if he can raise funds for Ukraine at 9, I think just about anybody can do it. We have a section on our website of how you can help. Anyone can host a fundraiser. We can take Facebook fundraisers. People can just have a meeting for a few friends. We'll be happy to zoom in, show our videos, and talk about what we're doing. You're welcome to fundraise for us in any way you can. If you can't, we can also take volunteers. We always want people who can talk to the press, talk to their friends, talk to their church, share this information. Churches and congregations have donated to us. We've collected funds through all sorts of ways. We effectively crowdsource large-scale aid. Sending some items is very important. There was just a recent case that we helped with where specific medicines for organ transplant recipients had to be sent to Ukraine. We coordinated the first portion of that from Portugal. It needed to go to a Kharkiv hospital, and the second portion was sent from the US. That is something that was not possible to obtain in Ukraine. It's something that wasn't possible to buy at reasonable prices anywhere near Ukraine in Eastern Europe or even Central. That's a perfect case for the kind of thing that you want to send over. As far as a coloring book or toys, save them for the refugees that arrive here. There are thousands of Ukrainians arriving here every day. Probably not quite thousands a day, but there's thousands arriving every week. They need help. They need resources. If you have physical items to donate to those people. There's still Afghani refugees arriving here. Donate to them. There's other immigrants. Help your local shelter if you're donating physical items. Of course, if you're a large store and you have several pallets of food that's good for months that you can no longer sell, let us know. We can connect you with a shipper. If you have several containers of items that you want to donate, in that case, sure, let us know. We will we'll tell you exactly how to get those to Ukraine at no cost to you, and provide you a tax write-off. That totally makes sense to send from here. But most items, you can buy a bag of grain, buckwheat, in Kharkiv for about 20 cents. There's no food item that you're going to ship from the U.S. that's going to be 20 cents. And that bag was enough for a couple of people for a meal. It's not a very glamorous item, but it's not like sending a pizza to Ukraine. Your money really does go very far when you donate, and then when we transfer it directly with no currency loss and with other ways to ensure that it goes right to the team. And then we provide the accounting, and then you can see the results.
So there is the accountability element to this as well.
Absolutely. And for any large donors, if you're interested in making any sizable donations or donor advised funds, we're happy to direct your donation or provide more detailed accounting on exactly how this is spent. And in general, if any amount that people are willing to donate, we can promise that it will go directly, but you don't have to trust us. Look at our press page. We've been on BBC, we've been on PBS, we've been in tons of local news press and national press, that write about us. We've been in Euromaidan press, which is one of the most respected sources of news from Ukraine. See our work. This is what's happening on the ground. This is the work that the teams do all the time, and this is what we try to fund.
It's wonderful, Ilya, and we'll of course make sure to include all the descriptions in information in the description to this video, so that you listeners and viewers can connect with Ukraine TrustChain. But Ilya, you've been to Washington D.C. You spoke to Congress members about the situation. How do you present the need for helping Ukraine to them? How do you explain to them why it is crucial to help Ukraine right now?
So I had a chance to go to DC as part of Ukraine lobbying days with several other Ukrainian organizations, and we spoke to the Philadelphia area congressional delegation, multiple members individually. And in general, Ukraine is one of the most partisan issues in the U.S. People are really supportive.
It's bipartisan, correct?
Bipartisan.
Right.
It's very bipartisan, with a few exceptions on the far left and the far right. And this is a somewhat family show. I'll reserve language for those separate discussion. But people really do want to help. They do have slightly different outlook on it. But the things that we've talked to them are simple, like work authorization. Immediate work authorization for refugees, because currently the Ukrainians that come here have to apply through a separate process. So we're telling people to come here, but they can't start working here. So what's the result? How they start working under the table. And that's the process. That's just administrative delays. That's something that should appeal to both Democrats and Republicans. We've talked about providing Ukraine more resources. And the one thing that we've really talked about is declaring Russia a state sponsor of terror. There's only a couple state sponsors of terror, and they include North Korea, Syria, Iran, and that has this whole set of automatic sanctions that were really tough and would very significantly impair Russia's ability to collect funds abroad, for companies to do business, and for companies to do business with Russia. A lot of companies are still doing business with Russia. So all of this aid that we're sending over here, Russia is taking in billions still from foreign countries. So if you have the time, if you have a chance, please call your member of Congress and ask them to support declaring Russia a state sponsor of terror. And if you're not sure, take a look at what's going on the ground. Follow the news in Ukraine. If you don't think that's a state sponsor of terror, then I don't know what qualifies.
How do you see the food situation in Ukraine? Ukraine is such a huge supplier of grain to Africa, to Middle East. Is this a humanitarian catastrophe that we could be looking at that will affect the United States as well, just because of all the need in the world? How do you see this situation, and how do you explain to politicians?
Given no one in the U.S. is going to starve because a box of cereal is going to go from $3 to $4. It's going to be very unpleasant. People are annoyed that gas prices are up. People are annoyed that prices are up, but that no one is going to starve for the one slight increase in food prices. In the third world, in developing countries, people will starve. The Ukrainian grain is the lowest cost export grain that's available in mass. Ukraine is the largest exporter of sunflower oil in the world. It's one of the largest exporters of grain in the world. And as far as international aid, right now people are talking about international aid to Ukraine. International aid to other countries often starts with from Ukraine. And that's going to severely impact what's available in sub-Saharan Africa, in multiple countries in Asia, and in all over the world. There will be a dramatic increase in food prices. And it's quite possible when this is said and done, although Russia is going to kill tens of thousands of Ukrainians, it's far more that will die because they can't get the food that was grown in Ukraine that Russia is currently blockading.
Not to mention that this will cause more refugees in other countries and affect things there as well. Once again, not once again, but just looking at the dealing with the refugee situations, we can help refugees here. We can also help where they're coming from. In this case, Ukraine's grain is keeping people alive and stable and connected to the place where they are. Otherwise, there's going to be greater, migration and everything that comes with it. So I think this reverberates around the world. Ilya, I'm so glad that you were able to find time to speak with us. Best of luck to your organization, Ukraine TrustChain, and I'm sure we'll be speaking again. And all the description, all the information will be in the description. What can I say? You're watching Rashkin Report. This is Yuri Rashkin. Hit like, subscribe, distribute this video in your social media so that your friends could see it. And this was another great way to help Ukraine from right here in the United States or anywhere in the world. So, Ilya, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. And if I had one thing to add is that you don't have to donate right away. Just look at our website, follow us on social media. Ukraine TrustChain is everywhere from LinkedIn to TikTok to Twitter to Facebook. Take a look at what we do. If it seems like the work is appealing to you and it's worthwhile, then consider a small donation. Look at what we do first, because I think the work is amazing. The people on the ground are heroes, and it speaks for itself. So go to UkraineTrustChain.org, take a look there. And thank you so much for having me on.
Ilya, it's very impressive. Slava Ukraini!
Героям слава!